All right, guys, welcome back. This is Andrea Epstein, and we are talking all things recovery this month of September because it is National Addiction Recovery Month, specifically Alcohol and Drug Addiction Recovery Month, but we're all about the behaviors too here. So we want to make sure that we tap into all of that. And we've gone over a lot of different things: fundamentals, urges, triggers, recovery, all those things already. And today we're going to be talking about lapses versus relapse. So I think it's pretty important, especially if you're at early recovery and if you've done your research or you've been in treatment before, or if this just isn't your first rodeo, you know that lapse, if not full-blown relapse, is a big part of the recovery process. We see them as part of the recovery journey. We don't see them as failures. I refuse to see those as failures because you learn so much every time you fall victim to old patterns. You learn, oh gosh, maybe I was a little overconfident. Maybe I was minimizing. Maybe I really do need to avoid those people, places, and things. And so, it's just part of a really good recovery process is to have a healthy relationship with lapse and relapse and any feelings that will emerge when you fall victim to those things. Okay, so again, grace, humility, honesty, openness, all of that is just really important. And when you have those things in place, lapse and relapse is just another day. All right, we're just trying to make sure that people don't fall into the addictive cycles again. All right, so just continuing to be honest, open, and willing, and anytime there's a lapse, just making sure you have the recovery support system in place, sober support system in place to talk honestly about it and just get back to work. All right, so what is the difference between a lapse and a relapse? Well, for me, and you'll probably hear this said in different ways, probably a lot of the same things said in multiple different ways. I don't think there's anybody more right than the other, but for me, lapses in judgment, character defects start to emerge, and all of those things start to happen long before anybody picks up and uses or goes back to acting out behaviors. Okay, so I believe that there is a lapse long before the relapse. And when people do relapse work as part of their recovery journey, they really do. They're like, oh gosh, I think I actually lapsed 6 months before I went into a full-fledged relapse. And they can identify, barriers that they can create moving forward into the future to assure them that that same lapse at least is not going to happen again. So again, being honest, being open, being willing, making sure you have a good sober support system in which to process these things is just so important. So make sure you have a good counselor, a good 12-step program, good accountability partners. Just make sure that those things are in place because lapses are going to inevitably happen. No shame. They just will. All right. So some people wrote in with some questions, and hopefully I can answer them. Okay. Mary, what do we got?
Somebody asked, how do you know you've relapsed?
How do you know you've relapsed? Well, honestly, there's a difference between lapse and relapse, as I said. It's harder to tell if you've lapsed, easier to tell if you've relapsed, because generally you've established what are your non-negotiables, what are the chemicals, what are the behaviors that you are determined to abstain from. If you pick up and use or misuse or go back to an acting out behavior that was in your inner circle, that's what we call it. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. But if you go back to those behaviors, you've relapsed. But there's lots of different things that happen before that relapse, and the best way to catch lapses is to be involved on a very regular basis, could be daily, but definitely weekly in process groups, in counseling, in 12-step programs, so that you can just talk through things with people and they can start to pick up on, oh, goodness, I'm starting to hear some rationalization. I'm starting to hear some minimization. I'm starting to hear some denial. I'm starting to see some overconfidence. People can start to pick up on things before you ever do because you're just not able to see it from within, but other people can catch it sooner. So, a healthy support system is critical. And just being honest and open. I had an amazing client come in to one of our process groups the other day, and he said, I think I'm in a lapse, but I'm not sure if I've relapsed. And we were able to really talk through, what does that mean? What is a slip? What is a lapse? What is a relapse? And we were able to really dive deeper into the circles of recovery. And anytime you participate in an inner circle behavior, which is a non negotiable behavior, something that you have decided and stated that you would purposefully abstain from, if you go back to that, you have relapsed. But then you've got your middle circle behaviors. And those are things that you want to have very clear boundaries with. Because when you participate in those behaviors, it could easily lead to lapses in thinking and judgment and eventually into relapse. And then you've got your outer circle behaviors, which are super important because that's all of your self-care. That's all of, the sobriety, the serenity, the self, and all things recovery and good, healthy habits and rituals that you've put into place with family, with friends, with recovery. So that's your outer circle, and that's your great buffer, because if you are active in that every single day, you've got a great buffer to keep you from those lapsy middle circle things, and definitely from your inner circle, which is your big, like, caution, no, 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 full-blown relapse. All right. Hope that helps. Do we have another question?
Yes.
All right.
Do lapses lead to relapse?
Oh, yeah. And I hope the circles of recovery can help depict that. Because if you are continuing to participate in middle circle behaviors, and not, if you don't have really good, healthy boundaries with those behaviors, you are in a lapse. And inevitably, if you are not, catching yourself, if you don't have a good sober support system in place, you will relapse and potentially fall down that very deep, deep, deep spiral back into your addictive cycle. So we're trying to keep y'all from doing that. And I think we've given you some good nuggets and ways to not just abstain, but to live a healthy life of recovery. Do we have any more questions?
Yes. The
Last question.
Is it normal to have slips while in recovery?
Is it normal to have slips while in recovery? Absolutely, it is. And that's why we want to go ahead and talk about it and prepare you for it and let you know the realities of the recovery journey, because that's what it is. It's progress, not perfection, as they say in the rooms. Progress, not perfection. 3 steps forward, and inevitably you will have 1 to 2 steps back. Sometimes you have 4 steps back, and that's like a full-blown relapse. But you know what? It's all part of the recovery process, and we embrace the whole entire process, and we try to keep toxic shame from creeping back in if you do have a lapse, because you'll definitely have lapses in judgment. You're not guaranteed that you'll have a relapse, but we want to make sure of that by removing toxic shame and judgment when you are in a lapse, and we want to make sure you have that good, healthy support system in place. All right. Is that it? All right, guys. So thanks so much for showing up. As usual, your call to action is to share this with somebody. Please do that. Please share it with somebody who needs it, because you're making an amazing impact in this world every time you listen, you absorb, and you share. The other thing I would ask for you to do is just continue to listen and write in. Look at what's coming down the pipeline on our resources as we release them, and go ahead and get your questions out there, because we want to talk to you. We want to support you and answer any questions you have. So thanks so much as always. We'll see you next time.